So, everyone, thank you so much for your time on this. I think it's a Tuesday, on this Tuesday afternoon. I know you're all incredibly busy and working very hard. So, it's fantastic that you've all taken a little bit of time out just to think about how you're doing. And of course, sleep is such a huge and important part of our overall well-being. So, this is going to be a really great and informative conversation. So, who are we? I am Gemma Scotcher. I am Director of Communications and Public Affairs at Education Support. Education Support is the UK's only charity focused on the mental health and well-being of everybody working in education. And we spend our time doing all kinds of things, providing amazing services like our free 24/7 confidential emotional support helpline. Um, we develop lots of resources and information on mental health and well-being and workplace well-being tailored specifically for those of you working in education. We go out and we deliver workshops to help you think about prioritizing your own well-being and to help leaders think about creating cultures that support their staff's well-being. And we also provide professional supervision and employee assistance programs. We do a lot of things, and it's all with you in mind. And this webinar is, a part of this offer that we have to you in the sector to help you think about your mental health and well-being. So we're really, really glad that you're here today to think about your sleep. And I will just say one quick thing as well, which is that we are a charity. And obviously, we try to provide all of our services free of charge to those of you working really hard in the sector. So if you love what we do, and if you are able to, we would be incredibly grateful if you could just go onto our website and hit the donate button and set up a regular gift. That is the very best way to support our work and ensure that we can keep doing it and keep making it for free for everybody in the sector. So thank you for listening while I make that ask. And so we have a brilliant session today with the wonderful Kerry Davies, who I think has just logged out so she can log back in again because of her camera. She's done a webinar for us before and it was wonderful. So we know she's going to be really, really good. She works for the Sleep Foundation, and the Sleep Foundation, well, they kind of do what they the Sleep Charity, not the Sleep Foundation, forgive me. They are what they say on the tin. They are a charity that focuses on helping everybody get the very, very best possible sleep that they can, because of course that is such an important part of our well-being and how we stay healthy, well and productive in these busy lives that we have. Kerry, before she worked for the Sleep Charity, she trained as a learning disability nurse and she taught in a school for teenagers at risk of exclusion. So not only is she an amazing expert on sleep, but she also really understands the challenges that you guys are facing every day as you do your jobs as educators. So she's going to cover a few things, but the main thing to stress is that the webinar will have a really practical focus. So she's going to try to help you develop a set of practical strategies that you can start using straight away, basically, including how to manage the impacts of stress, thinking about how to still try and get a good night's sleep, even if you are on high alert or very stressed out with your day-to-day challenges. She will also help you think about making simple changes to protect your wind down time. And that is so very, very important. We know from our own research that so many of you do struggle to switch off in the evening. And when it comes to burnout prevention, one of the first things that we do help people to start thinking about is how they can protect that wind down and ensure that they can switch off in the evening. And the other thing that she's going to do is help you build everyday habits that help you improve the quality of your sleep. And obviously, there are a lot of myths out there about how we can improve our sleep. So she will help you think about that, but with the real evidence, the real evidence rather than the myths.
So thank you, everybody, for bearing with me. I'll get started if that's all right, Gemma.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kerry.
Brilliant. So this webinar, I think Gemma's probably given you a really good kind of introduction, but this is all about sleep and sleep, particularly in education. So I'm going to be talking a lot about that. When I do these workshops, I don't want to do it so that you fill up with loads of information, but none of it's actually that relevant or is going to actually help you. So I try and give you as much information that's actually going to make a difference to your sleep. I think that's really, really important. So I'll just give you a brief introduction about who the sleep charity are themselves. So the sleep charity was established back in 2012 by a lady called Vicky, who was actually a sleep deprived parent, went through a behavioural program, and it solved her son's sleep. And then she opened a sleep charity, as you do. It was initially just for children. Very quickly, we realised sleep affects everybody, so we need to be serving adults also. It's a tiny, tiny charity based in Doncaster, but wins loads of awards. We won the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service a few years ago. All of the work that we do is heavily evidence-based, and it's supported by our advisory board, who's made up of professors and doctors and people from all aspects of the field. And the mission is purely and simply to empower the nation to sleep better. I'll tell you a little bit about me. So I've been a sleep practitioner now for 15 years. I'm also a cognitive behavioral therapist for insomnia. And I did used to teach as well in a PRU before I went into the world of sleep. So I do have some idea of what the issues might be. So we support families using evidence-based approach, postcode lottery. We provide healthy information like I'm doing today. The reason I'm rushing through this bit is because I want to get to the bit that actually is going to really help you, and there's loads to get through. We are heavily involved into research into sleep and partner up with lots of different universities, creating research and then working off the back of that. We tirelessly campaign to raise awareness around why sleep is so important. And there's a big provision actually of healthy sleep information for adults on the website. So please do check that out as well after the presentation, because there's a lot there. So we'll start with why sleep is important. We all know we need to do it, right? But why does it really, really matter? And actually, when we look at sleep, it's one of the fundamental basics that we need. So it sits alongside food and water. And when we're talking about food, that isn't even nutritious foods, right? That's calories to keep your body going. So sleep is like top tier of what we need, the absolute baseline. We spend a lot of time asleep, and it hasn't really changed either throughout the years based on what we know, which means evolution would have gotten rid of it, right? And it hasn't. So it tells us that sleep is offering something that we can't be missing. It has a significant impact on our physical health, our mental health, and our emotional well-being. So if we sleep well, we see benefits in those areas. If we don't sleep so well, we might see, negative kind of reactions in those areas. So sleep, particularly in education staff. So professionals are expected to do a lot, right? So there's a lot of high cognitive demands, emotional demands throughout each and every day. When you're teaching, you have to have a really sustained attention, right? You've got to remain emotionally regulated yourself for your students. The decisions that you make are going to be in the moment, split decisions, and classroom environments are complex, right? And they're probably getting more and more complex year upon year. When the brain is that alert all day, right? So when we're busy all day, we're making all of these decision making with, these heavy decisions throughout the day. We're teaching, we're making decisions on the spot. We're doing a lot of kind of chopping and changing and context shifting. It can make it much harder for the nervous system to relax and switch off, which is what we need in order to be able to fall asleep. So many teachers will report that they feel absolutely exhausted from a physical perspective, but actually mentally they're still quite alert and kind of might be going through the day and things that have happened through the day, or just be completely overwhelmed, right? That your brain has just been so busy through the day that it's struggling to then be able to calm down. And it's really important that we recognize that this is what's happening on a day to day. So the index reported that a massive proportion of staff experience workplace stress. So 76% of all staff and 86% of senior leaders are stressed. Now, this is due to lots of different things, but I think the highest kind of report on the report were the high workloads, the long hours. These are really common across teaching roles. And like I say, I was teaching, it would be 19 years ago, and that was in a pre, which was different, right, to the full classroom. And even then, this was really apparent. And with the way that things are changing and the needs of students, this is going to be getting increasingly more difficult. The emotional demands and, pupil well-being, we know that we're in a children's mental health crisis, at the moment. This is putting a lot of pressure on you guys, and of course that's going to be difficult, to be able to manage your stress alongside those things. Many staff report difficulty being able to switch off after their school day, like I've already said, and 1 in 4 education staff have actively sought out to change or to leave their current job because of these pressures, because of the impact this is having on their health and well-being. So when the brain, like I said, remains highly alert throughout the day, that nervous system is likely to stay in this problem-solving mode much, much longer into the evening. I'm just going to quickly check the chat, but I will go for questions at the end. So what does this look like at ground level, right? What's happening with people's sleep? So having trouble falling to sleep in the first place can be more difficult. Waking up during the night, finding it difficult to be able to fall back to sleep in the night. Racing thoughts at bedtime. So, sometimes that time is the only part of the day where it's quiet enough for your brain to say, finally, start thinking about all this stuff that you've been ignoring all day. Feeling this exhausted, feeling tired, but being very mentally alert and mentally kind of stimulated. Understanding how stress affects sleep can really help you to take small steps to support your sleep and well-being, which is what I'm going to cover today in this workshop. It's really, really important that you've got techniques and tools and strategies that you can use going forward. To me, that's important. So the thing about sleep is nobody actually knows why we sleep, right? But what we know is it is completely non-negotiable. It's essential to life. Everybody here today will have slept definitely within the last 72 hours. We need it in order to recoup and restore both our physical, mental functioning, our emotional well-being. There was a guy called Rick Staffen back in 1971, so this has been recognised, right, for a really long time, saying that if sleep doesn't serve a vital function, it's a massive mistake in evolution, because effectively we're unable to do anything during those hours when we're asleep. And we know that now we're living in this 24-hour world where things are quite busy. Evolution would have definitely got rid of it if we didn't need it. So if you've got pen and paper handy, that would be great. If not, just make like a bit of a mental note. But the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, now it's worth writing this down, because this can be a really good kind of point to go back to. This is widely used across all kind of medical services when it comes to looking at sleep. And what the Epworth Sleepiness Scale does is tells us how sleepy we are during everyday activity. So I just want you to score yourself. So 0 would be you'd never dose in that situation. 1, there'd be a slight chance. 2, a moderate chance. 3, a high chance. So if you were sitting and reading, how likely would you be to fall asleep in the day? If you were sitting watching TV, hopefully not standing. If you were sitting inactive in a public place, that could be a cinema, it might be a restaurant, a meeting, anywhere like that. If you were riding in the car as a passenger for an hour without a break, so continuously for an hour. If you were able to lay down and rest in the afternoon, your teachers, right? So I'm guessing that's not happening during the week, but even at the weekend. Sitting and talking to somebody, sitting quietly after lunch without alcohol. And if you were driving a car and sat in a car, stopped for a few minutes. One thing I will say, at the we go to like a biannual sleep conference, and the last one I went to, the DVLA, were there talking about sleep and driving. And I mean, I remember when I was first driving, everywhere on the motorways would say, don't drink and drive, right? But now what does it say? Tiredness kills. Make sure you pull over and have a sleep. Make sure you know sleep is everywhere now because we know that it's causing real difficulty. Anyway, back to the Epworth Sleepiness Score. So anything over 10 would be deemed as being overly sleepy. So this would warrant a referral into services, right? And they would then check your Epworth Sleepiness Score along the way. But it's a really nice tool that you can keep coming back to. So if you are over 10, listen even more carefully, and hopefully I'll be able to give you some really good strategies to bring that score down. But it's worth checking it again in a couple of weeks. So the part that's less spoken about to me is probably the most important part of sleep. And this is the biological function of sleep, what's happening behind the scenes, right? Because you've got to get your biology right. Because if your biology isn't right, then it doesn't matter what techniques you put in place, it won't work if your biology isn't working with it. So the first thing that we have is our sleep drive. Now, this creates a balance between sleep and wakefulness. So if you imagine when you wake up in the morning, your drive to sleep should be low on maybe not zero, but low. And then as you go through the day, if you imagine your body is like an empty vessel, it will build and build and build with the sleep drive. Once it hits its peak, that's what sends us to sleep and keeps us asleep. And then as we go through the night, our drive to sleep becomes less and less and less. And then we wake up in the morning. This helps us to wake up in the morning. Now, one of the first things that I say to any of the clients that I work with is a lot of people will think about how long should I be sleeping for? I always say flip the script on that, right? And work out how long does your body need to be awake in order to build enough sleep drive that you fall asleep easily. For most people, it's going to be like 16, 17, 18-ish hours. So if you work that out first, that's going to put you leaps and bounds ahead of anyone else that's kind of working with their sleep. Because once you know how long you need to, how long it takes to build for sleep, you've got your biology that is then going to be working for you rather than against you. Then we have our circadian rhythm, which is our inbuilt kind of body clock. Now, there's a lot of talk of chronotypes. People can sit quite comfortably in chronotypes, so night owls and larks. Again, it's good for you to have that understanding of whether you are more of a night owl or a lark. Really good to know that, because if you're trying to press yourself to be the other one, it can be quite difficult if you're quite strongly that chronotype. Now, the circadian rhythm loves, loves, loves routine, right? So it likes to know what you're doing and when you're doing it. When you feed it with that information repeatedly, what then happens is the circadian rhythm will then recognize that and start to automate it. Now, the circadian rhythm doesn't just control sleep. So I'm going to give you an example of how the circadian rhythm, how you'd be able to understand your circadian rhythm works for you and automates itself. So it also controls metabolism, right? So I want you to think about a meal that you have in the day where you'd have it at a similar-ish time each day. Now, when you eat at the similar-ish time each day, what happens is the circadian rhythm takes that information, and because it's happening at the same time, it's like, I know what we're doing here, right? So then what happens is the circadian rhythm will start to remind you. So say you eat breakfast at 8 and you're coming up to, I don't know, quarter to 8, 10 to 8, your body will then start to make you feel hungry. It might make you salivate, might make your stomach rumble, might even make you feel a bit dizzy if you go past 8 o'clock. That's your circadian rhythm in action. And we want your circadian rhythm to be doing this for sleep also, right? So when we train it well enough, it will then tell you when it's time to go to bed and when it's time to wake up, which is the perfect place to be, right? There's no big finish line when it comes to sleep. It's actually when you haven't got to think about it, that's when you're in the right place. Now, set wake up times and set bedtimes can be really important, but focus on the wake up time first. So if you go back to the sleep pressure, if you're waking up at the same time 7 days a week, your sleep pressure starts to build from the same time 7 days a week. Then what happens as a result of that is your bedtime then becomes apparent, right? Without you having to force anything, it will become apparent because your circadian rhythm has got that consistency. Then the circadian rhythm takes that information. It's like, great, right, we know what we're doing now. It could take a couple of weeks for this to be really well trained. And there are things that impact on it. But just as kind of a baseline, that's how the biology is working. Now, darkness is really supportive of the circadian rhythm. It's the only thing that we had years ago to tell us when to sleep, and bright light for when we wake up. So darkening an environment an hour or so before bed can really support the circadian rhythm and support the hormone melatonin, which is the sleep signaling hormones. This is going to help your body to prepare for sleep internally. Then in the morning, bright light, natural daylight wherever possible, or if not, an SAD lamp or a light box can be just as good, like a synthetic natural daylight, particularly helpful in autumn and winter. So bright light within the first hour of waking up is going to really support your body because it sends that message into the brain. Melatonin is released in the pineal gland, which is deep in the center of the brain. It sends the message in, says stop giving me that because it's daytime now, which will help your daytime hormones kick in, and it will help your energy levels throughout the day. So 10 minutes of bright light can be really, really supportive of sleep and actually make you feel better overall. So how we sleep, these are the stages of sleep. This is a hypnogram. And when I learned about this 15 years or so ago, you're like, wow, I didn't know that this was happening. So hopefully you guys will get the same as I'm going through the whistle stop tour of sleep, you'll get the same kind of feeling. But let's quickly go through it so that you understand what's happening with your sleep and because there may be things that you're concerned about that are actually quite normal. So when we first fall asleep, we drop into our stage 1 sleep, super duper light sleep. You can be very easily woken, and actually you do pop up into wakefulness once you've gone down into stage 1, you will pop up. And if you've ever experienced like jerking, or feeling like you've fallen off the bed, this is often the transition between stage 1 sleep and coming up to wakefulness at the beginning of the night. We then go into stage 2 sleep. Stage 2 sleep, still quite light, still quite easy to wake from. But what happens here is the body starts to prepare for sleep. So you might start to notice that you're breathing slow, or if you're watching somebody go to sleep, their breathing starts to slow down during this stage 2 sleep, but you can still be fairly easily woken. Then we get into our stage 3 sleep, which is our deep sleep cycles. And these happen predominantly the first half of the night. Now, this is the most restorative sleep of all. And your body naturally will protect this at all costs, right? Because you need it in order to be able to survive, right? It kind of replenishes the physical body to some degree, does a little bit of the memory consolidation, but that deep sleep is really, really protected sleep. So the body will protect that. And all the years that I've done this work, I've rarely come across anybody who's not getting at least 3 hours a night, because that is, your body will naturally kind of grab hold of that. Really hard to be woken from as well. And if you have been woken from deep sleep, you'll know you've been woken from deep sleep because you feel really disorientated. You don't know where you are. So as we move then into the second half of the night, that's where the most of the REM sleep happens, dream sleep. This is vital for our mental health and our emotional well-being. And this is why sleep deprivation has the impact that it has, because often when we're sleep deprived, it's REM sleep that we're missing, right? So those vital functions that we need in order to be able to be the best versions of ourselves, we've missed out on because we've missed out on some of that sleep. Now, the other thing that's really important to note is the wakefulness that happens throughout the night as well. So we have peaks where we wake up the whole way through the night. So every human being wakes up at night. Often we don't remember it. It's a subconscious thing. We'll wake up, we'll check our environment. Is everything okay? Is a bear going to eat me? No, I'm fine. I'm in my bedroom. We'll go back to sleep again. Often, though, if you've fallen asleep and you've been in that kind of tired but wired state, this is, you've kind of fallen asleep because your body has crashed, and then you wake up and your brain's like, ping, right, all this stuff that you didn't get to last night, let's start thinking about it now. And that can happen in these, particularly as we get later on through the sleep cycles, because our hormone levels start to drop in order for us to wake up. So the sleep is naturally kind of lighter. Okay, so just to go over what we've spoken about, we go through different cycles. So we go through this stage one sleep through to REM sleep. Each cycle lasts, it's not an exact science, but about 90 minutes. And we have to experience all 4 of these cycles to wake up feeling rested. Now, a good night's sleep, you're going to have 4 to 5 cycles of sleep through the night. Okay, what causes poor sleep? So, lack of routine. And this can be anything from not having a bedtime routine, although I'm not massive on, having to spend loads of time prepping for bed, but the circadian rhythm, not knowing what's coming. Could also be if you have lay-ins during school holidays at weekends and it kind of messes up the routine, that can have a real impact on sleep overall. Stress and anxiety, huge impact. I'd say the leading thing that I see. When we're stressed, we release cortisol, and cortisol is the hormone that tells us to be awake, that tells us to be alert. So it stands to reason at times, particularly of acute stress, sleep is kind of downgraded because, of course, the body doesn't know that we're stressed because we've got loads of work. The body still thinks, oh no, we're stressed. Are we going to be eaten? So it would be ridiculous to sleep, right? If you were going to be eaten, although we know cognitively we're not, the body kind of hasn't got that memo yet. Partner disturbance, so snoring is a big one. I'm going to give you a little strategy that a lot of people don't use. Some people do, and it's really, it's a really great, it works really well. If you have got a partner who snores, or in fact, if you are the snoring partner, you record the snoring like during the night. So for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then the person who is being disturbed by the snoring would then listen to that snoring during the day for about 2 weeks-ish. Not just in isolation, you don't have to just sit and listen to snoring, but you could be, I don't know, washing the dishes or whatever and listening to the snoring. What this does, snoring wakes us up for a couple of reasons. So if we go back to the sleep cycles, we have these partial awakenings. We're checking, are we okay? We wake up, check, noise, snoring, which is quite, it's not the nicest sound in the world. And it's different to when we first fell asleep. That can then cause us to wake up. Then we're frustrated that we've woken up, which causes our cortisol to rise, which then keeps us awake. Now, when you record the snoring and listen to it, the brain will go, oh, okay, this is a sound I hear all the time. So it's less likely to disrupt you and wake you up. You can also use earplugs and noise and things as well. Bedroom environment, super important. Things like working in the bedroom can have an impact on sleep. Laying in bed for too long, not being able to sleep can have a really negative impact as well, because the brain starts to associate the bed as a place of worry and stress. So the bedroom environment's really important. Keeping the environment stable as well. So I always look at stability of environment. So what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? And all of those things stay the same, which is why we use things like blackout blinds or eye masks, earplugs or white noise. The Scandi method of sleep where you have your own quilt and your own pillow, you don't share with a partner. So really thinking about your bedroom environment, is it inviting? Do you want to be in there? Diet can have an impact as well. Caffeine, general rule for caffeine is to avoid it 8 hours before going to sleep. What caffeine does is the sleep drive or the sleep pressure that we're building. Caffeine almost acts like a bit of a mask. So it like does it, you don't feel it rising. The caffeine will like block it, but it's not blocking it because it's still building. So when the effects of caffeine kind of reduce, then you get a huge surge of this sleep drive, or which can make you really crash. So yeah, caffeine about 8 hours before sleep. For most people, that's plenty enough time. Alcohol sends you into deep sleep quickly, really impacts on REM sleep. So and the thing is, because alcohol does help you to go into deep sleep, then you think, oh, just a couple of glasses of wine really helps me to fall asleep, because it does. But then it really impacts on the dream sleep, which that that sleep is all about kind of your mental health and emotional well-being. So it's counterproductive. And food as well. So try and avoid eating any heavy meals around 3 hours before going to bed. Now, exercise and movement is really important. Exercise and movement helps to keep the sleep pressure building. And I would always say movement over exercise, actually. So frequent movement breaks are probably going to be more beneficial than an exercise class. So just ensuring that you're getting up and moving about as frequently as possible is going to really support sleep. Excessive screen time, particularly screens that wire you in, right? So sometimes when we're watching, a lot of the evidence around screen time now isn't what we initially thought it was going to be. But what we do know is it's more around the arousal levels. So if you're watching something you've watched before and you pretty much hear or there about it, that's unlikely to have a huge impact on your sleep. If, however, like for me, TikTok is a no-no because I get lost on it for hours because there's just so much to see, that's going to have a bigger impact, right? Because it's hard for me to step away from it. So you want to be thinking about, if you are using screens, how easy is it for you to step away from it? If it's easy, then likeliness is it's going to be okay for your sleep. It's not going to be having an impact. Inappropriate napping. So with napping, there's a lot of research to suggest that it's really positive. And when we look at it, it's like these 10 to 20-minute micro naps that people have that tend to be supportive of productivity and motivation and all of the good stuff that you want. Ideally, if you are going to be napping, strategically do it, right? So doing it before 2 o'clock in the afternoon and just doing 10 to 20 minutes. So short nap, and that can really boost. If, however, you're napping and it impacts on your nighttime sleep, avoid the naps because the quality of sleep during the day is not as good as the quality of sleep at nighttime. So what does sleep deprivation look like? How is it impacting upon us? So from an emotion and mental health, I mean, I could talk about this in isolation for an hour, so we're going to whiz through it. But from an emotional mental health perspective, we're more likely to have mood swings, be irritable. Sleep deprivation can cause depression. With anxiety, jury's still out. They've definitely got a bi-directional relationship and they definitely exacerbate each other. They're not a healthy combination. But whether or not sleep deprivation causes anxiety or the other way around, kind of 50-50 on that at the moment. Now, I've already spoken about stress and how stress impacts on sleep, but how does sleep deprivation impact on stress? And it makes us much less tolerant. So when we haven't slept very well, normal everyday stressors feel a lot more catastrophic, right? They feel a lot bigger when we haven't had enough sleep. So it is important to look at all of these things and how much is this playing into your everyday. Now, 4 and 5 long-term sleepers are likely to suffer from a low mood. They're 7 times more likely to feel helpless and 5 times more likely to feel alone. And honestly, it breaks my heart. I can't tell you the amount of people that I speak to that feel like this every single day. And sometimes, some people feel quite a lot of shame around their sleep as well. So they're kind of hiding it from people. So they're feeling like this and hiding it from people is a really sad place to be, especially when there's so much that we can do about it. Now, I really want to stress here that this next part with the physical health, this is not to scaremonger you at all, not one bit, because what we're talking about here is people who are having fewer than 6 hours over a long period of time. Now, when you're having less than 6 hours sleep, it does put you at a higher risk of having heart disease and a stroke, Alzheimer's as well. There's a lot of research going into that at the moment. Obesity and type 2 diabetes. Now, when we haven't slept well, our body doesn't tell us that we're full, first of all. So we have the tendency to overeat. And nobody craves a cucumber, right? When you're sleep deprived, you're looking for those complex carbohydrates, like give me those chocolate biscuits and that fizzy pop, the stuff that gives you energy really, really quickly, right? Because that's what your body needs. It's like, give me some energy. I want to keep going because actually I haven't got the reserves here because I haven't slept well. So obesity and type 2 diabetes do, coincide with poor sleep. And it lowers our immune system, which means that we're more likely to become unwell and it's going to take us longer to get over it, which is really important when you're working in schools. There's a lot of bugs that are going around the schools, right? There's a lot. So those who frequently get those less than 6 hours are at a significantly higher risk of stroke and heart disease and all of the other things I've spoken about. I promise you it gets better because I'm going to give you stuff to do. So what's it going to look like to you in the classroom? So it's going to affect the skills that you rely on every day, right? Which is important. You know, we want to be maintaining our skills. So it's likely to include reduced patience, lower emotional resilience, increased feelings of overwhelm, having difficulty concentrating, slower decision making. Protecting sleep, therefore, is going to support your personal well-being and your professional performance. And the one thing that I want to mention here as well, which isn't in the presentation, but a lot of the students that you're teaching are likely to be sleep deprived also. So we've got this combination across the board, right? So within the classroom, teachers, senior leaders, students, it's across the board that these things are happening, which isn't a great combination of events, really. So a couple of myths, let's dispel some myths. Do you need 8 hours sleep every night? Absolutely not, right? So what we as sleep professionals, we always get pushed into this corner of like, how much sleep do you need? But it is going to be variable based on what you've done. So if you had a really busy day physically, you've walked, I don't know, 10 miles, you're probably going to need a little bit more sleep, right? Because that physical restoration is going to need a little bit more time. Or if you've had a busy day, I don't know, if you do some training or, that kind of thing, then you might need a little bit more sleep because you're going to need more time to consolidate those memories. Most people sit between 7 and 9 hours, most people. Now, some people do sit outside of that between 6 and 10 hours. The best way to tell if you're getting enough sleep is how do you feel the next day? That is the number one way to tell if you're getting enough sleep for you, particularly mid-morning. So 10:30, 11, how are you feeling from an energy perspective? And that's going to give you a good idea of whether your sleep is working for you. Napping in the day isn't always bad, as I've already said, but if napping in the day impacts on nighttime sleep, don't do it because the nighttime sleep is going to be of way better quality. You can catch up on lost sleep. So this is a really interesting one because there is such a thing as sleep debt and there is such a thing as paying back sleep debt. However, it doesn't work in equal terms. So if you miss an hour's sleep 2 nights ago, doesn't mean you have to sleep an extra hour the following night. It might mean you're a little bit more tired. If you're listening to your body, it might tell you to go to bed maybe half an hour earlier or so, and that's likely to be enough to kind of make that up, if you like. But because our sleep cycles, one night and then one night and then one night, it's not like a continuation of cycles. So it doesn't build up. It's not like money, that you have to pay back. Older people don't need as much sleep. Now, people over the age of 50, the deep sleep starts to reduce. So as we age, we have less deep sleep. Now, with having less deep sleep, what happens is we have more light sleep, which means that we're more likely to wake up more frequently. So it's not that we don't need as much sleep, it's that the architecture changes post 50-ish. Again, not a complete exact science. Drinking alcohol, I've already told you about, so I'm not going to say it again because nobody needs to hear that twice. But the next part I always put after the drinking alcohol is eating cheese does not give you nightmares. The fact that you think eating cheese is going to give you nightmares is what gives you nightmares. Actually, cheese contains an amino acid called tryptophan, which converts over to melatonin. So I always say, instead of having a glass of wine or a pint of beer or whatever it is, whatever you tip, or have some cheese and biscuits, that is likely to help you to sleep and a good payoff. So stress and sleep. So work stress, I've spoken about this already, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail. Work stress can equate to then that hyper alert nervous system. When the nervous system is alert, when we sleep, it's going to be listening out, right? So although you're asleep, the nervous system is like, oh, we're not quite 100% safe here. So it's going to be keeping an eye, scanning the environment, which is likely to then fragment your sleep. So then this is going to give you a low coping capacity And that's going to then increase the amount of stress. So we've got this loop, right? So we're stressed, which impacts on sleep, which then impacts on our being able to manage our stress, which then impacts again on sleep. So the whole thing is like a cycle. So stress disrupts sleep because the brain stays in this alert mode, like I've said. So it's like, is there a bear coming? No, there isn't, but there might be a deadline. Cortisol then remains elevated into the evening, and naturally, cortisol starts to drift off as we go into the evening. Cortisol is a stress hormone that keeps us alert. 3 o'clock waking, I mean, this is something I hear every day. The brain gets activated, goes into this problem solving mode, but the brain can't problem solve at this time because lots of areas of the brain are switched off, including the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for what's the word I'm looking for? It's responsible for rationalizing, problem solving, keeping you within your parameters. That's not working at 3 o'clock in the morning. So you go into problem solving brain, and actually it causes more stress. So we get more cortisol. And then sleep starts to be something that people try to manage, right? And this is herein where lies the issue with sleep mostly, is there will be something that's knocking your sleep off for whatever reason, likely something stressful, right? We're not meant to sleep when we're stressed. So that's kind of the first thing. But what then happens is when we don't sleep, we then become stressed about the fact that we don't sleep. So we then try and manage the sleep by doing all of the things that Google says or Instagram or whatever it is, right? We'll try all of the different things and we're trying to manage sleep. But what we're doing is we're putting more emphasis on it, more emphasis on the fact that we can't sleep, which then causes us this continuous cycle to keep going. So poor sleep is going to show up in reduced patience, our bandwidth is much lower. And this is a work, but it's also going to show up at home as well, right? It doesn't just show up in one area. We're going to have a lower resilience and we're going to find it much, much harder to switch off. So what are some strategies? What are the things that I can tell you categorically really, really support good sleep, right? With people who are working in very, very busy environments, having a clear end of day boundary, right? So teaching never really has a natural stopping point, right? There's always more that you can be doing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific time that you stop, right? But it might be that you get X, Y, and Z done, and then that's the end of the day. You need something that's going to help to signal to the brain that work is complete. Now, what I talk about a lot is like writing down priorities, brain dumping, all of that noise in your head, writing it down, pen to paper is always the best way, always back to the old school, writing it all down so your brain can then go, right, that tab is on there, that tab is on there, that tab is on there. This then helps your brain to kind of calm down a little bit, and then you move into your evening without the whirling of the brain. Allow this transition to happen as well. So going directly from marking or lesson planning and getting straight into bed, your brain is still in problem solving mode, right? It's still good. And if you've got to mark, say there's, I don't know, there's end of year exams, whatever it is coming up, and you are working late at night, even if you're working right up until bedtime, I would always recommend not going straight to bed. Even if you go to bed later, having a transition period, even of 30 minutes where you do something that really helps you to switch off, so important before going to bed. So a short wind down period and doing. So one of the hardest questions I ask people is, how do you relax? Nobody can ever tell me how they relax straight off the bat, right? It takes them a while to think about this because it's not something that always comes naturally to people, but really thinking about how you relax and how you rest and how you unwind. And that might be reading, it might be stretching, it might be watching Friends for the 100th time. Whatever it is that helps you to relax, allow for that transition period once you've come out of work mode, really important. So these are tools that you can use either if you can't fall asleep at night, or if you wake up in the night and you can't fall back to sleep. Now, these come from CBTI. They're articulatory suppression is what they're called. And the word link game, that's cognitive shuffling. But I'll talk you through them. They seem really random, but they work really beautifully. They're great tools. Please do write these down if you're struggling with any of those, because they're amazing. Nobody knows which one's going to work for them. You might fancy one or two of them more than the other. And when it comes to actually, it's different ones that work. So counting backwards from 1,000 in sevens. Don't panic about getting this right. Okay, so this is more just a way to turn the brain into doing something neutral. That's what we want the brain to be doing, neutral, and that will then help the brain to then switch off, go back to sleep. The word link game. So think about one word, so it might be apple, and then you then think about a tree, so an apple tree, and then on a tree you get a leaf, and then the leaves are then green, and then you think green frog, and you keep word linking. You can do this as well from like the last letter of the word that you've just said, so that can work too. A to Z game, so pick a category, so it could be animals, food, cities, whatever you want from A to Z, and work through the alphabet slowly, thinking of a word for each letter. Pictorial game, visualize an object. This could be a butterfly, right? Something that's predictable. So you think about this object, this butterfly, you think about the size, shape, color, all of that stuff, and then you switch it, right? So say you've thought of an orange, red, and black butterfly, you then switch it to a blue and yellow butterfly. These can be really, really helpful if you've got a busy mind, right? So if your mind is racing, if you're thinking about things that have happened through the day, your mind, and then you can't get back to sleep again. These are really great tools to use. So please, please do keep these in your back pocket. So if you're awake and if you're stressed and you can't get back to sleep, and these strategies haven't worked for you, what you want to do is get out of bed and do something away from bed. So it could be a chair in your bedroom, it might be downstairs, but you do something that you find calming, right? So one of the things that you do to relax and calm down, and then go back to bed when you feel sleepy again. Don't extend out that morning wake up time. So keep that morning wake up time really, really consistent. What we want is the bed to be a place of safety, not a place of stress. So we're rounding up now. So what are we thinking about when it comes to sleep? So first of all, think about what your sleep issue is. Okay, so where does it come from? What strategy is going to work for you? Exercising and moving during the day is going to really help you to sleep better at night. Keeping regular hours for going to sleep, particularly that wake up time in the morning. Thinking about a routine that works for you, how you rest and how you restore yourself. Think about the temperature in the bedroom, the lighting, the noise, the bed, the bedroom itself. Is it a sanctuary? Is it somewhere that you want to be? And avoid stimulating screens the hour before bed. A little tip for screens, actually. There's a setting on phones, laptops, iPads, that kind of thing, where you can switch your phone to grayscale mode. So basically, it turns the phone or laptop or iPad into black and white, which makes it less stimulating. Natural daylight is going to be one of your best friends when it comes to sleep. If you can get yourself out into natural daylight first thing in the morning, as much as possible throughout the day as well, this is going to really support good sleep. Darkening your environment at nighttime, again, really helps to send that signal that it's time to start producing melatonin, which will naturally help you feel sleepy. Ensuring that you separate that work life from home life, so having that transition phase, really important. Clock watching, one of the biggest things that causes stress and keeps us awake is checking the time, because as soon as you look at that time, you calculate how long have I been asleep, how long have I got left. If I don't fall asleep now, I'm going to feel terrible tomorrow, and all of this stuff starts racing. If that's you, don't look at the clock, avoid looking at the clock. You don't need to know what time it is. It's not going to make anything better. Mostly it makes things worse. Think about your alcohol intake and your caffeine intake and writing down where is before bed. I'd say at least an hour before bed, ideally a couple of hours before bed, because you want all of this stuff out of your head so that you've got time to be able to rest and relax. So signposting. So the education support website and helpline, the numbers here, please write that down if you need to access that. The Sleep Charity, our website, we have, there's got loads of information and there's a helpline as well, the National Sleep Helpline. Sleepio or Sleep Station is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and you can access this through the GP. There's the NHS insomnia, NHS obstructive sleep apnea, that if you think that you might have any of those conditions, have a look and it'll give you kind of, the symptoms of those things. Royal College of Practitioner or your GP. And that's the end of the presentation. So the website's here, our email address is here, info@thesleepcharity.org. And I know that that's really fast, but I tried to get as much out and in the hope that we've got some time for questions as well at the end. So I hope everyone's enjoyed it.
Oh, Kerry, thank you so much. That was really, really helpful. And I know from the sessions that we run with school leaders and teachers that the kind of focus that you've given on nervous system regulation is really important there. That's so much of what we spend a lot of time talking to educators about, how to kind of be aware of being in a sort of hypervigilant state.
Yeah.
And then tips for sort of bringing those stress hormones down. It's so important. I
Yeah.
also really loved your point about grayscale. I have
Yeah.
used grayscale and it's incredibly helpful. I think we probably do have time for a quick question if
Yeah.
anyone has one.
Yeah.
Um,
We've got 6 minutes.
oh, brilliant. That's fantastic. So, Amy, can I ask, did any come up in the chat? I feel like there might have been. Or would anyone like to be brave and go on turn their mic off, mute, and use their voice, or you can put your camera on as well, whatever you prefer. Does anybody have any questions for the brilliant Kerry?
I'm here now, so use me as you will. My dog also snuck in through the presentation. I was thinking, I hope she doesn't bark, but she hasn't. She's laid behind me.
Okay, the question that I thought I saw in the chat is, when you wake at night, why does your brain tell you that you need to go to the toilet?
Oh, always, always, always. And you know what? And the more you think about not doing it, right? So the more you think, oh, I wish I didn't do that, the more it will happen. So I would say, if you wake up and even there's even a sniff that you need to go to the toilet, just get up and go to the toilet. Don't turn any lights on. Try and avoid turning lights on if you can. Even if you've got like a little torch or something, but just go and then get back into bed. And then you can use those strategies, because what can sometimes happen is you'll lay there, think, do I need to go? Don't I need to go? Do I need, oh, I'm really annoyed now. I need to get up and go to the toilet. And in all of that noise, that's what then keeps you awake for longer.
Yes, that is really helpful. We've got a question from Manon on whether Kindles, do they affect the sleep?
Yeah.
No. They're grayscale, aren't they?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
actually, blue light is with the research that's coming out is that blue light isn't having the effect that people thought it was,
Right.
and scientists initially believed it was. It's more about what you're consuming. So,
Yeah.
so I always say to people, just think about the arousal level. If somebody
Yeah.
said to you, "Can I have your attention for a second?" Would you be, "Oh, wait a minute, that's too
Mm.
much arousal."
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. I'm a horrible Instagram addict, and I'm really starting to notice it in myself. I can feel a sort of rising effect, and then I'm like, this is time to put this away now, and maybe delete the app for a bit because it's too much arousal, as you put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that noticing is important there, isn't it? Another really, really good question from Michelle, because I spend a lot of time trying to get this right and not getting it right. Is going to the gym in an evening good or bad from a sleep point of view?
Yeah.
Certainly for me, I feel strenuous exercise in the evening gets me stimulated, keeps me awake. So
Yeah.
I try to do it in the morning. But I wonder what your take is on that.
Yeah, so there's some research to suggest that morning exercise helps with falling to sleep.
Mm.
PM exercise helps with sleep maintenance. But it's
Oh,
not, again, nothing's nothing's black and
yeah,
white when it
everyone's
comes to
different,
sleep,
right?
like we're all different. But what we do know is strenuous exercise in that last part of sleep because we get an increased heart rate, our blood pressure increases, our body temperature increases. In order to fall asleep, all of those things have to decrease.
Mm,
So if you're exercising later into the night and all those things
mm,
increase, you've got to come back down to baseline and then down some. So
yeah,
about 3 hours, 2 hours
yeah.
push.
Yes, exactly. That's really interesting. Thank you. And I think so much of it as well is knowing yourself as
Hmm.
well, isn't it? And the fact that everyone's a little different.
Yeah.
Um, oh, really good question. What can I do to stay awake when marking? Literally every time I'm marking essays, etc., I struggle to stay awake. Whoever asked that question, oh my gosh, I can totally imagine because you're reading so much and nothing puts me to sleep quite like reading.
Yeah.
So Kerry, what do you think about that?
What I would use is bright light. So, and there's very, very few products that I ever recommend for sleep, just
Mm,
because I think it's such a product heavy environment,
mm,
right? But SAD lamps, they are worth their weight in
mm.
gold. They really are. They synthetically give you that daylight. Daylight reminds the brain to stay awake. So if you're marking, you need to be alert. Marking an SAD lamp is going to be a great solution.
Yeah, they're very good, aren't they? Okay, that's really helpful. Should you try and sleep on each side evenly? I am getting slight hearing problems from the side I sleep on.
Yeah, there's no research to suggest.
Yeah.
Should. And it's really hard to manage actually because
Mm,
you're not aware. You're
yeah.
unconscious for most of the night, so you're not aware that you do. One little thing I say to people is you'll always wake up in the same position you fell asleep in as well. So every time you're partially awake, you'll move back to how you first fell asleep. So
Mm,
every single time you wake up in the night, you'll do that. So if you to test me out, check what position you fall asleep in. When you wake up in the morning, it's going to be the same.
yes, of course. It's very difficult that, isn't it, to manage because you're not going to be aware.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, so I think we're actually running out of time. I wonder if we could do this one quickly.
Yeah.
Because I just really like it. What if your dog, cat, or child wakes you up? Is it possible to get back to sleep?
Yeah, it is. They are pains though. I've got all three of those things.
Yeah.
Two of the children and one of the dogs. Yeah, but using the strategies. Honestly, those strategies are so simple and so effective. Really, really
Yeah.
effective. Please keep those in your back pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. They're really practical. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kerry. As I mentioned, we have had you come and do webinars for us before. They're always incredibly popular and they're always so informative. So thank you so, so much for coming and talking to our audience today. And to everyone else, thank you again for using this time to just think a little bit about something that might benefit your well-being. Sleep is so important. I hope you all manage to get a really good night's sleep tonight. And just to let you know that there will be an email following up with the recording and the slides on that. So you will still be able to access the brilliant content from today. So please keep an eye out for that. And there will also be a little survey for feedback on that email. So if you've got a minute, we would really appreciate it if you could fill that in for us. But otherwise, I'm sorry, I've run over by 1 minute.
Thank
But
you for
thank you
having
so
me.
much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Bye.
lot. Take care.